Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for the Workscope Review Process training. I thought it was important to hold this meeting so you can understand what I am looking for and what happens when work scopes are reviewed, and I guess more importantly, what are your next steps to make any corrections as necessary. Okay, what we're going to do is talk about the work scope very briefly and why it has to be right, the work scope review, major findings, and next steps. Objective: to recap the intent and value of the work scope, to explain how the work scope review process works, and to explain what corrective actions to take. Um, First thing, I want to thank all of you who participated in writing a work scope and all the other elements that were required in order to submit a work scope. This year was really, I saw the effort and I really think you all did a great job. So I do want to give you a round of applause for trying very hard to make sure you submitted a valuable product. Our first thing we're going to talk about is the work scope and why it has to be right. There were over 40 work scopes that were reviewed or submitted this year. So I am the sole reviewer. And the connection of the work scope to the title fund is that there is a direct line between the work scope and the activities that are allowed under that specific fund. The work scope should be seen as a roadmap. It is the document that explains how federal funds are being expended to both internal and external parties. So we have internal auditors and we have different departments or chiefs that would like to read a work scope and they need to understand what the project is. And we have internal parties such as the Texas Education Agency, and there may be some federal reviews of work scope that any of those are possible. So remember, the work scope is unique to each fund, explains the use of those funds, it documents certain processes are being followed that are required in law to take place. And it's not a requirement, but it is a good thing if whatever you're doing your work scope is aligned to the Texas Education Agency strategic priorities. The first step in the work scope development process is beforehand, which is the comprehensive needs assessment. Um, you should have a group of individuals that will work together to come up with certain deficiencies or needs within the district. And that is done through the collection of data. It is up to you which data you use, but it should in some way explain or support your work scope. Uh, this whole slide is an old slide, and I just wanted to sort of do a reminder. These steps were laid out to you back in October or so as what you should do. Um, before, as you have your CNA, you should contact Program Evaluation, who will help you mold your activities into measurable goals statements. You should create a work scope planning team, set up some dates that are good for parties who are participating, develop a work scope, and edit it based on the information that your CNA gave you and any planning meeting feedback that you receive. This document was given to you or provided with your Workscope template when I sent those out. This basically goes over each section of the Workscope and so it explains what you should do. This is me. I was reviewing these all by myself, lonely. So, and it is a time consuming task, but I do look at each and every Workscope and I review each element. This sort of timeline is sort of what I said before. You create a CNA, you develop the work scope. Once you have the work scope, you monitor it, and at the end, you evaluate. And we'll go into a little bit more detail with on this slide later on, and we'll revisit the same slide. Again, the process is I am the sole reviewer. I read them all. each each section is reviewed, and then one of the sections is early on is verification of supplement non-supplant. This slide is an old slide from a Work Scope Wednesday. It talks about what is supplement non-supplant. Every single title, 1, 2, 3, or 4, all of them possess um, the supplement non-supplant rule applies. Title 1, there is some more difficult situations or um, some it still basically has supplement non-supplant that rule still exists, but on a campus level there are some ways that you can address it, but that basically doesn't apply to us as a central staff. There are 3 things that we look for when it comes to supplement non-supplant, and that is it has not been purchased previously out of a general operating 199 budget, that the law uh, does not require it. There's state law that doesn't require that this activity occur, or local board policy does not require it. I trust, but I do verify. And I will say, I do, if there's a larger contract, I will run that vendor to see if it's the same activity where they paid previously out of 199. Uh, I do look at state requirements. I keep up with that and laws and local board policy. I do go into on our district website and check our board policy to make sure that there's no language that say that we will or must do something. Say, I ask you to do those 3 things as well, particularly if you were not the same program manager that maybe had it last year, that you verify that the vendor that you are working with was not paid out of 199 the previous year. But you should also be aware of state laws and requirements and local policies, and make sure that whatever you're doing is not required by any of those entities. So I do it, but I also expect that you do it before you write your work scope. The work scope review process continues by me reviewing the narrative. I just make sure it shouldn't be extremely long or lengthy, and that whoever's reading it, whatever you're saying is clearly understood by a layperson. Anyone who could walk off the street basically understand what you're saying, because a lot of the auditors who review are not necessarily education people, so they are not necessarily familiar with certain trends or things that you may be doing, and also they're definitely not necessarily aware of acronyms that may be specific to DISD or common education language. The work scope planning process is review for evidence that there was a process that occurred, the required stakeholders participated, and there was required documentation available for me to review, and that was supposed to be uploaded into Title I crate. We'll go into those 3 elements in a little bit greater detail when I talk about the errors, the common errors, because this was one section that I would say 70% of us may have fallen a little bit short. This document, the meaningful consultation document, was sent out as well with along with your template. And this was to let you know what TA is looking for as far as what does meaningful consultation mean, and who are the required stakeholders. The people who are listed on your work scope are not people or positions that I chose. These are the ones that the state requires. Your measurement of effectiveness. So when you're setting your goals and your activities, this is probably where evaluation, if you did collaborate with them, would have helped you write a SMART goal. Your budget is outlined for budget setup. So basically, you should be able to hold this document, this section of your work scope, and input your information into BOSS. I do, in a way, look at both reasonable and necessary, but not. It's very hard, I'll put it that way, for me to gauge that when I'm reviewing it. But I will tell you, it definitely occurs when we do requisition review. For instance, if you're buying 10,000 books in May for PD, we're pretty certain that that will be considered an unreasonable amount that you would be able to actually use before the grant period ends. And that would be called something that auditors like to use is the word stockpiling, because title funds are supposed to help the students who generated these funds. It's supposed to help them be successful in that year. So if you are stockpiling or ordering things that you're going to use for next year, you will be helping students who may or may not have generated that budget. So we always like for you to spend early and make sure you will be able to utilize those things that you purchase early on, and where students can benefit out of the current grant period. Okay, there is an assurance of responsibility. It's around section 8 or 9 of the work scope. And because when we submit the application to the Texas Education Agency to have access to title funds, we have to mark or sign off that we will be good good stewards of those federal funds, and make sure that we don't allow the reckless use of title funds. Ensure evaluation plan. You do not have to work with or contract with our evaluation assessment team. Although that seems to be a common thing, it is not a requirement. You do have to evaluate, but you do not have to go through that department. And I did look to see if there are good options and good plans to can give you a adequate feedback on how well your work scope would be. I may have made some suggestions. And then there are just signatures to make sure everybody at every level is aware that there has been a request for federal funds. The comprehensive needs process is reviewed for basically the same thing as the work scope development process, that there was an actual process that did occur. There are stakeholders, the required stakeholders are participating, and that the documentation that the process took place is available, and that should have been uploaded in Title I Crate as well. Again, the meaningful consultation requirement applies to both the development of the work scope and the CNA process that occurs before you develop the work scope. And this again was sent out with I sent it with your review. It was sent with your work scope template back in January, February when it was sent out. So this document has been around for a while, but I just want to make sure you take a look at it so you know that what you have to do and what it should look like when you are having everyone come together to participate in the processes. This slide here, the Workscope Planning Committee, this is just I grabbed it from the end of one of the Workscope, the Title IV Workscope template. It does have some specific ones that are specific to Title IV, and I'll get to those in a minute. But I really want you to look at the top, that asterisk. It is referring to required stakeholders. And those are the ones you must have, and the quantity that you have. So, and you're not to alter those. You can't take them off. You just make sure you find the 3 parents, the 2 principals, the 2 teachers, a student, other school leaders, which may be an assistant principal. It may be also a campus coach, instructional coach. It may be a department lead or whatever. But other schools, those are the specialized instructional support personnel. When I say that you have the green arrows there, those are the local government representatives and the community-based organizations. Those are unique to Title IV. It has some more people that you do have to be included in the process. I did not include, because I guess I was not necessarily aware that you are to have that we had a sizable Native American population. And now that I know that we do have a sizable Native American population, they must be included in the process if you're using Title IV funds. So I will, if you have Title IV next year, you know, or plan on getting in contact with someone who can help you out with meeting the Native American representative who can take part in your process of developing the work scope. Down at the bottom, you see it's in orange. It says other. The other may be actually other work scopes. This is a time when you can coordinate between funds or coordinate an effort between 2 different groups. An example would be we have in the post-secondary education, we have some advanced academic type situations going on there, but we also have it in the advanced academic services who pay for the professional development of teachers so that they can teach those types of classes. You two could perhaps be on each other's committee. So there is and that's 2 different funds. That's Title IV and Title II, and there's some that you could coordinate and make the most of your dollars. All right, this slide here I added in today because I went to a training today. This is from a TEA slide. These are required stakeholder groups. On the left, there's no if, ands, or buts. You must have all of those those roles represented, and they must have a seat at the table. The ones on the right, you should include them if the presence of those student bodies, if those students exist in your district. And I would have to say every single one on the right, we basically have. So those people or representative for those student groups should be involved in your process. Dallas has more than one student that could be classified in one of those groups. And this would be an example where Ashley Marshall represents the homeless student population. She is their advocate. So therefore, if you have something in Title II that's perhaps working on curriculum or something, or PD for teachers, you all could get together and coordinate and discuss how could you all work together, or what could your activities that could, overlap or work together to support each other. So that's all of those groups need to be represented. But most importantly, there again is another opportunity for coordination. Key points: diversity. This district is huge, and you can go from one side of town to another, and they don't look alike at all. So there is a central program. It's because we've held money at the central level. Every student basically should be a beneficiary of your activities. There are some that are sort of specific, um, but you should have representatives from parents and teachers and principals from throughout the district, because their views differ. So you must make sure that you involve them in the process and show that you have touch bases with everyone who has taken that will benefit from your activities in your work scope. Here, this is an old slide as well. This is just a visual of all the positions that must take part in your planning process and your CNA process. I want to stop here and take a moment. It's mentioned on the meaningful stakeholder document. DISD employees cannot serve as the parent representative. I'm not saying that they cannot participate. They can. They just cannot count as one of the three that are on your committee, because the way the Texas Education Agency sees it as, it's hard for an employee to not represent their own self-interest versus the interest necessarily of the students of the district. So I'm gonna remind you again, DIC employees cannot serve as the parent representative on your committees. They can participate, but they cannot be your only representatives. They're convenient. I'm not gonna say they're not. I have, as a parent of a DISD student, I could serve on a committee, but I cannot be the only parent. There would have to be at least three others that are not employed by DSD that would participate as well. Meeting documentation is basically the same, whether it's in person or virtual, and whether it's in the CNA or in the comprehensive needs assessment process or the Workscope development process. You must have the same pieces of documentation: agenda, attendance, notes, and minutes. To document participation. Minutes are a good location where if you can get parents to speak out or email, this is where you could possibly get them to show participation in your minutes or your notes. Okay, major findings. And I've sort of alluded to quite a few of them already, but we're going to go over the ones that I found most common. The work scope planning and the CNA process were not evident as a process. They were documented as an event. You had one event, one meeting, and you explained what was going on, and that was it. Presentation styles, where you explain what's happening, does not document a process. There's no quantity necessarily that you should achieve. I'm not going to say you have to have 5 meetings. What I'm saying is that you should have at least some type of evidence that a process took place. For instance, you may have had a kickoff meeting where you do present, you explain what's going on. And then you have at least maybe one more follow-up meeting, or you have email exchanges or a Google Doc that shows that there is an ongoing discussions of what's going on. That was not evident in majority of the work scopes. And what was submitted in Title I crate, I got a mix of monitoring meeting minutes and CNA. They were all sort of titled different things. And each one of these are different. A CNA meeting is a completely different meeting than a monitoring meeting and a work scope development meeting. Comprehensive needs data. As requested, you did submit a list of, and that for the most part, everyone did. But there were very few, I won't say no, there were few, there were a few who did, but there were very few who provided actual examples of the data that was utilized to come to the conclusions that these were the needs that you were going to address. Many from consultation deficient. The required roles were not met. We didn't have a teacher. We didn't have a teacher assistant. We didn't have a parent, or a parent was a DISD parent employee. So there were different ways that went wrong, but that was a common finding, a very common finding. Limited and geographic representation. Again, we went to one school, which is only representing one school, one side of town. And this is central, and we are supposed to help everyone. So we must take into account the views and needs of everyone as much as possible. Requested items lacking. Some people didn't upload anything at all, or uploaded in the wrong location. And to be honest, because of the amount of documentation that I had to review, I just did not go hunt for anything. If it was not in the location where it was supposed to be, I didn't go look for it in any other location. So that is pretty much a simple fix. Minor findings. Uh, People copied were old work scopes. They just, whatever was written in last year's or the year before, it was just copy and pasted into the new document. And I'm not saying that there are not repeated needs, but I would hope at some point there's some change or adjustments, and you're not doing the same thing over and over again. The Department of Education and TEA do not want to see good money being spent after bad. If you've been doing the same thing for 2, 3 years and you're not getting any change in results, then there's definitely a time to go back and revisit what you're doing and take an honest look at how or where your activities can be improved. Um, Data that was listed or provided wasn't based on local needs. There was a lot of national information that was, sometimes that were referenced instead of only information based on the students of Dallas Independent School District. And minor fine, I would say to limited. Um, you may have put in something for consultation, but you just couldn't see meaningful. You didn't see any interaction or response from the required stakeholders. The easiest one to fix, the Title I crate uploads. This is just, and I did send this picture with the email on where to go. You have to switch from it doesn't automatically flip to 21, 22. Not at this time of year. Next year it will. But at this point, it still is 2020, 21. So you do have to go to the top and change the year to 21, 22 to find the folders to make your submissions for next year's work scope in July 21, 22 group of folders. Next steps which are very Pretty much easy. I don't want you to reinvent the wheel. Review the form, the evaluation form that, or it's really the review form that I gave you, and take note of my comments and what I considered as errors. Upload any missing information in the correct location of Title I crate where necessary if this is something that's applicable to you. Revise the work scopes on pages where necessary. And I'm going to talk about in the next couple slides on that one. If meaningful consultation requirements were not met, meaning you didn't have the number or the correct roles included in your process, you're going to have to reach out and hold some additional type of situations where that can be remedied. Whether that's some more Zoom meetings, if that's emails, you definitely got to get some more. And let's say you didn't go across town like you should have, you're going to have to reach out to some different people in different locations, different principals, different teachers from across the district and get their input on what's going on. TA is extremely focused, laser focused on meaningful consultation. So therefore, I have to be laser focused, and I forgot to encourage you to be laser focused as well on documenting a meaningful consultation process. New signatures are not necessary. Just make revisions on the affected pages and swap them out. All corrections must be completed by no later than June 18th. This is an example of one that of a situation that I came up. For instance, if you thought you were gonna get $2 million and you only got 750,000, you can't afford that third coordinator that you want. So just strike through the number. You can write it in. I used digital, but that's not necessary. If you want to do it by hand, you can just write in. I didn't get 3, I only got 2, and recalculate how much money each one, how much the base pay, benefits, and refill in. This is one situation. This is if you didn't get enough money to do an activity. Strike through the activity that you won't be able to, and you will not be held responsible for completing, and just strike through everything that's not, that since you will not be able to do that activity. Resources to help you make your corrections. Look at the Workscope Review form. Look at the meaningful consultation document and look at the instructions about Workscope development. I've held several Workscope Wednesdays. These in particular, these 3 dates did focus on certain elements of the Workscope that you may find helpful when you're making your revisions. I did a comprehensive needs assessment training video that is on YouTube that you may go back and revisit. The Workscope evaluation presentation is not there quite yet but it doesn't really necessarily evident in what you're doing at all anyway. But there is a valuation video that evaluation and assessment did do that you can go back and look at as well. So my final evaluation from me presentation is not available, but the work scope evaluation that came from evaluation assessment, their presentation is available and it's attached to one of those emails and that are listed here. There was one in December, January, February, and April. Reminders. There's a basically what I said, being a good program manager should be aware that there are 4 distinct things that you must do. Right now, we're about to focus on the evaluation of 2021. We won't evaluate 21-22 until this time next year. But right now, you're getting ready to focus on the evaluation of the 2021 work scope. And I just wanted to remind you that. Anything that you need to submit for your evaluation for 2021 needs to be uploaded by July 31st. There are some programs or work scopes that have significant activities during the summer, like the bilingual education. You have several summer camps. There is probably the professional digital learning. You'll be probably putting on several PD activities during the summer. And if that's the case, you can add on additional information by September 1st that would have, that you should evaluate to see how effective they were. Um, I would not want, for instance, the bilingual ESL work scope to complete their evaluation at this point because a large portion of their budget will happen during the summer. So those activities should be a part of your evaluation. So again, you can do probably most of what you've done in the year and submit that by July 31st. But those with significant summer activities, you need to complete and add additional information by September 1st. These are the steps of the evaluation. I won't go through them. You can read them at your leisure, but these are the steps that you need to go through when you evaluate your 2021 work scope. Here's the tool that you will use. Um, and this is more like a quick snapshot overview that will be easy to read. That these are the things you did. This is how it came out. This is what we thought. These are our strengths and things that we feel that we need to fix. One reminder for 2020, for 21-22, there are forms that must be submitted. The date was April 30th, but I assure you we have not closed them up quite yet. But we're closing in on the time that we have to submit this through our application. So make sure specifically the capital outlay justification, the educational field trips, if you intend to spend any field trips during spend any of your budget on educational field trips for students, you have that field trip justification filled out. And the employee out of state travel will remain open throughout the year. But if there's things that you intend to, or personnel you intend to send out of 20, early on in the year in 21-22, let's say in August, you go ahead and fill out this form right away so that you won't have any issues with getting it through our approval process. Okay, all travel out of for 2021 must be done by July 31st, 2021. This includes virtual. And I hope everyone understood very well. Again, if you have any questions, you may reach out to me, email me if you want a meeting, a one-on-one meeting about to discuss your work scope review individually. I do not have a problem with having any meetings with you. So just reach out. June 16th, 2021 is what I am planning to be my next Workscope Wednesday. So please save the date. And I do want to say thank you one more time for doing a really great job of I saw a stepped up game this year. So I'm very happy and pleased. So thank you for that. If you need any help, this is the contact information. I'm basically the only one that can help you out on the review because I'm the only one that reviews them. So here's our contact information. Just email us, call us if we need our help in any way. Thank you, and I want to wish you a great day.